So let me tell you a little bit about my hometown, Talkeetna, Alaska. Talkeetna is a funky little village just off the Parks Highway between Anchorage and Fairbanks. Located where three mighty rivers come together, the word Talkeetna actually means where the rivers join in the native language of the Dena'ina tribe. Here the Talkeetna River and the Chulitna River meet up with the Susitna River, and together they all become the Big Susitna River. The Chamber of Commerce calls Talkeetna the gateway to Denali because of its proximity to the mountain. But believe me, it has other nicknames as well. It's a famous and somewhat infamous little town. While it is indeed the gateway to Denali for the masses of tourists and mountain climbers who flock here in droves every summer, for me and my family arriving here in 1970, Talkeetna was the gateway to our new life on a little lake in the wilderness up the tracks. And it was an entirely different town back then. Main Street was unpaved and muddy or snowy, with just a handful of businesses and homes along it. So yeah, it looked pretty much like this. If anyone had told us that someday it would be like Main Street Disneyland, crawling with dazed tourists, throwing money at dozens of venues packed into every possible space like mercantile sardines, we never would have believed it. We couldn't have even begun to imagine its transformation into the tourist and mountaineering hotspot it would eventually become. Why would anybody want to come here? We would have said. Some of the businesses that are still recognizable and providing the same basic services in today's Talkeetna are Nagley's, which opened in 1917, the Fairview Inn, built in 1923 and still going strong after 100 years of debauchery, the Roadhouse, built in 1917, the Talkeetna Inn, also known as the Teepee, and the Swiss Alaska Inn, which was called the Rainbow Inn back then. There are also a number of buildings that still exist but have morphed into other businesses. There used to be a gas station in the middle of town, which is now a huge booming business called Denali Brewing Company. And next door to that, there was Talkeetna Grocery, and that is now the famous Mountain High Pizza Pie. What used to be the schoolhouse that opened in 1936 is now the museum. The hangar just off Main Street that used to house Don Sheldon's planes is now the Sheldon Community Arts Hangar. This runway here, the Village Airstrip, was created in 1938, and shortly after that, they built the state airport across the tracks, and the era of aviation in Talkeetna took off. See what I did there? Oh, maybe we get to see it take off. Woo! How's that for timing? In 1951, a new, easier route up the west flank of Denali was pioneered, which allowed climbers the advantage of flying out from Talkeetna up to the Kahiltna Glacier at the base of the mountain and climbing from there. By the early 70s, the climbers were routinely choosing this option, and the local bush pilots were getting very busy and even a little famous. We were lucky enough to know and fly with two of the finest, Don Sheldon and Cliff Hudson. Which brings us to the Talkeetna Cemetery, where a lot of those climbers and a few of those pilots are now. This, right across from the, what you would call an airport, is the Talkeetna Cemetery. Let's take a little cruise through here. I always come by and pay respects to some of our Talkeetna people that are here now. People that I knew from the time I was 6. Lots of love, lots of flowers. They maintain this cemetery really nicely now. They didn't used to, but they do now. Notably here lies Cliff Hudson and his son Jay. And those are people that we knew well. Cliff was quite a famous bush pilot up here. And you can see that they're buried side by side. Jay actually preceded Cliff in death, dying of cancer in 2009. And then Cliff died a year later of dementia. Anyway, I have many fond memories of Cliff flying us out to the lake. He was quite a character and a really good soul. And then one of the other really interesting things in this graveyard, in this cemetery, I will show you. Every year, mountain climbers perish on the mountain, and so they have this tribute over here, the Mount McKinley Climbers Memorial. Of course, it's so old they still call it McKinley. They have not changed this plaque here. And some of them are in Japanese because a lot of the climbers come from Japan. Now this guy in particular was a local favorite, and his nickname was Muggs. And my sister actually has some interesting ghost stories involving Muggs. And we'll get into that later on in the summer when we talk about her book, Ghosts of Talkeetna. And maybe she'll take us on a ghost walk. But yeah, Muggs has made his presence known since his passing in 1992. Here is the memorial stone to the memory of Ray Genet. And he was a very, very famous mountain climber, and he ended up dying on Mount Everest in 1979. And over here, this is like a wall of the years and listing all the people who died on Denali. Well, you can see here in 92, oh, that's the year that Muggs died, actually. A lot of people died on the mountain that year. They had some horrific storms and just a lot of tragic circumstances. So you might ask, what brought settlers to this area in the first place? Well, the answer is a pretty common story. First it was gold, then it was the railroad. The years roll by and the seasons come and go, but the basic cycles of life here repeat faithfully as expected. Every spring the snow melts away and the town fills up like an endless festival. And then every fall, just like magic, the tourists and the climbers disappear. The crazy, bustling summer fades into another dark, quiet winter, and the locals take a deep breath and settle back into their normal routines. And through it all, life in Talkeetna hums along to the flow of the rivers, the trains, the planes, and the character and the vibrancy of the people who make this small town a very special place on this planet. My hometown, Talkeetna, Alaska.
When the day is done, let's have some fun. We still got one more stop. Meet me tonight at the Fairview Inn. When the Weeping Willies play, I'll see you in the crowd. If the band don't play too loud, we'll dance the night away.